All right, welcome everybody to another Modern Agent Blueprint. I am so excited today because we have Sheila here from 𝗡𝗶𝗸𝗀𝗀 Financial. And if you guys saw her speaking at Level Up, she was one of our platinum sponsors. So she got a little speaking spot, came up on stage and was talking about how we as realtors work so hard for all of the money that we make, and we need to make sure that's working for us. So we invited her to come on and do a special call just for us to kind of go over the 5 risks of retirement. And Sheila, I'm going to hand it to you if you want to give a quick intro.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. I am excited to be here. And I think we're going to cover a lot of great information today. There'll be a QR code at the end of this where we can connect individually if that makes sense for you and really delve into opportunities that you have and how things change and what we have going forward. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and share my screen here as we get into these 5 risks of retirement. And I know sometimes when we're in the middle of working and doing daily life and we're just starting out in our savings plan, retirement and investing seems so far away that it often becomes one of those I'll do it tomorrow activities. And so I'd like to bring some scope and thought into how we can look at this now and how it can benefit you and choices that you make now impact down the road. So we're kind of going to go through 5 different topics. We're going to talk about lifestyle. We'll get into how that covers how we live, what we do, why we need funding, taxes, because that's our silent partner in everything that we do, taking a little portion of what we earn, and flexibility. Working in real estate, I'm sure you experience commissions that are fantastic and then not so great. So how do we accommodate and know that we've got ongoing income to cover needs, wants, and lifestyle? We'll talk through income and then protecting what you have and how to know that's covered. As Nicole mentioned, my name is Sheila Maloney. I've been in the financial planning space for 15 years and I work with 𝗡𝗶𝗸𝗀𝗀 Financial Group. We are excited about growing and becoming, doing more, being involved in more communities. So it's exciting to be a part of this real estate community and be able to sponsor the Level Up event. A lot of great information. I know there were a lot of people that didn't get to be there. So next year, fantastic time to look at how you can take your career to that next level. I specialize in creating income plans, and we'll talk specifically about how taxes and diversity and where that comes from and how to create alternate options. 𝗡𝗶𝗸𝗀𝗀 Financial Group is proud wealth management partners with the Detroit Lions and the University of Michigan Athletics. So it gives us an amazing opportunity to work with fans, student athletes, all sorts of staff and different options is looking at how can you maximize that 1099 income. You know, we're at a time when kids are receiving NIL payments and often don't understand the difference between W-2 and 1099 and how to create a business and how to look at that. So we're able to come alongside and provide some of that education and change that financial trajectory. So here's our 5 topics for the day as we kind of break into lifestyle, taxes, flexibility, income, and protection. So we'll start out with lifestyle. The reason we all do what we do and we work so hard is to create that better life. How do we create that leveling up experience? Might be a school that you want your kids to be a part of, or a second home, or a boat, or time on the lake, or vacations. All of that is something that we strive to improve where we started and where we're going. And one thing that is drastically different from W-2 to 1099 is you're always going to have some flexibility on what is your paycheck for the month. So when we first think about lifestyle, I have a phrase that I use when people retire to not think about what you are retiring from, but think about what you are retiring to. What do you get to do? What are you spending your income on? What are those opportunities that you get to invest your time and money? And having that plan set up before that next large check arrives allows you to understand where you're headed. Now, you will want to write these plans in pencil, right? Because we know life is going to change, life is going to come at you, and you're going to have to make adjustments for maybe a new career option, maybe somebody that you're going to help support or take care of. You're going to see some flexibility in how that income looks. And so we want to understand, and it's important, I think, to look at this in a percentage wise rather than looking at it as a dollar amount. And you might think, well, why does that matter? My bills are fixed. I know what I have to pay. But if we think about how lifestyle creep happens, right? When that large commission check comes in and you think, fantastic, I just started out. Finally, I've got this good check. I want to really make this, enjoy this. I'm going to take a big trip. I'm going to take this big thing that I've been waiting for. We want to keep in mind what's coming down the road with taxes, with what your long-term savings plan is, what your short-term investing strategy is. And so thinking about that in percentages allows you to reward yourself for the hard work that you put in, and knowing that you're going to be able to take that trip or at least set aside funds for whatever your accomplishments might be, but also keeping in mind what's coming when you maybe no longer want to have current active income. And being in real estate, I think, Nicole, the second panel that was up there talked about one of their largest regrets was not investing in rental properties sooner, right? They wanted to get out there. So being in real estate, you're going to have amazing opportunities come across your desk. At a moment's notice, you're going to have an opportunity to make an investment. You want to already have that set aside where you know where you're pulling those funds from and making that investment happen. So understanding the liquidity and being able to know the tax consequence and where that's coming from. Having your income plan set up so when things come in, you've already set aside the part that's going to cover taxes. You've already set aside future retirement income, that long-term savings, short-term savings where you're going to be able to utilize that in future real estate or different other opportunities they might come along. So you want to think about it's not just what you have coming in for income, but what you're keeping. It's always about what ultimately ends up as that net profit in your pocket. So you want to understand how you're paying taxes on that. Taxes are something that we think about, in the course of our country's history, we are at the second lowest marginal income bracket in time, if we think about taxes and the marginal income. So we want to understand what's coming down the road when taxes may or may not increase. How are you allocating current assets and how does that benefit you? And this is where it gets into a really personal level. You might have kids and have more tax deductions now than you will in 20 years, or you may be single and not have any plans to have kids, and that's going to make a different impact on how you think about where your assets are allocated and how they're earning for you. So their location and their allocation are two different things that we'll think about in conjunction with taxes. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to check out this website. It's called usdebtclock.org. Currently, this is back from January. So currently here in April, our nation is already $39 trillion in debt. And when we think about debt, there's two ways. Let's take bankruptcy off the table. Two ways we can increase income or get rid of debt. And not to get political, but either side of the aisle loves spending money. They spend it differently, but both sides are going to continue to spend. And the only way they can increase income is for you and I to pay more in taxes. And so if we zoom in on this screen, you can see they've allocated what they look at each taxpayer as what we're responsible for paying. So this can be something that we think when we think about contributing to solo 401ks or your personal IRA, and you're like, I'm getting this great tax break on here. It's a way to bring down my business income, contributing to my solo 401k. We want to kind of keep in mind what's coming 20 years down the road. What's the growth in that product, and what are you going to be paying taxes for down the road? So this is just thinking through where you are now, what's coming down the road, and how does this all work together? We look at this as the known tax rate. So how can we take advantage of what we know the tax rate is today what we anticipate it to be, and how can we look at using this. So I'm going to tie this screen in with a few of our upcoming screens to kind of think about 3 different buckets of using money and how that works and how we think about saving and creating this income. So we're going to talk through tax loss harvesting, which specifically ties into our non-qualified accounts. We'll talk about Roth or IRA contributions, also conversions. So typically while people are working, we're really going to focus more on the contribution side of things. The ultimate goal of all of this is, how does this produce income? When do you think about withdrawing? We think about retirement planning as 2 sides of a mountain, right? As you're working, you're accumulating funds, right? So if the market drops and market goes down and you're putting money in, you've bought stocks on sale. Think about in real estate when there was a housing bubble, right? When those prices dropped, it gave an excellent opportunity to go in there and buy properties and think about investing in that way. But at the same time, when we reach the other side and we're thinking about withdrawals, we think about a completely different side of how we look at that. So when we pay taxes ties into how we look at each of these different options. There's a number of different things, so I'll kind of break through this. And as we have individual sessions, we'll get further into detail on this. So let me know if there's questions on clarifying this. We're going to think through 3 different ways, and this refers to your asset location. We have qualified IRA, meaning currently you receive a tax break. If your income is under a certain amount, you can contribute to your personal IRA or your personal Roth. You might have a workplace plan if you're in a larger agency where you've got a 401k, right? You might get a match. You may have the pre-tax or the after-tax options. And then you also have solo 401k. So if you're here and you're thinking, well, I'm just an individual entrepreneur, how can I create a savings plan? You have the opportunity to create a solo 401k, which is going to work very similar as that qualified IRA. You're going to receive a break right now on your taxes contributing to that plan. IRAs as a standalone are going to be reduced in what you can contribute to them. So a 401k is going to give you the most amount opportunity of putting money aside for the future. If you have additional employees, you may use something referred to as a SEP, S-E-P. That is a employee plan that you're able to use as a business owner when you have additional employees. Solo is going to be reserved for you. Maybe a spouse works for you, but that's the extent of it. All of these 401k plans not only have a pre-tax side, but also a Roth side. So I just got to take a moment and break down the difference of when we think about, on average, if you're going to work and save for, let's say, 25, 30 years, and you're going to have $1 million in a 401k when you retire, you will have invested approximately $300,000 to $400,000 of that million. You would anticipate more than half of it to come from growth over that time. So when we look at putting money into a pre-tax or IRA type 401k, you're going to receive that tax break on that $300,000 to $400,000. That means when you go to take the money out in the future and it's now worth $1 million, you are paying taxes on that entire amount at your ordinary income tax rate. That's where we think about what our national debt is and what future tax rates may entail and where you might be on this existing. Now, you might be thinking about the One Big Beautiful Bill that went into existence last year and said that these tax rates were going to be permanent. And we might think of permanent as something as in place and not changing. But in the IRS world, permanent just means here until someone changes it. So we think about standard deductions or itemized deductions and where you might fall depending if you're single or married filing jointly, and thinking about where we are in investing for how that $1 million looks. Now let's flip that around and take that same $1 million and say that you invested that in the Roth section of your personal 401k. That means you would have paid taxes on that $300,000 to $400,000 now. That grows to $1 million down the road. You have created that $1 million as tax-free income that once you're over 59 and a half, you are not having to pay taxes on that. That becomes tax-free after 59 and a half. So this is something, whether you have not created a Roth or maybe your kids have not created a Roth, it's a great opportunity to think about paying the taxes at today's rate and creating future tax-free income. Third type of account is a non-qualified account. You might be familiar with this as a brokerage account, individual, joint, trust type savings account. This is where someone who is under 59 and a half would want to utilize what I refer to as short-term savings, right? So maybe you want to be in the market, but you're really waiting for a new real estate opportunity. You're waiting for something to come along. Perhaps you're saving for something in a few years. This is where you would be able, think of a glorified savings account, right? You move money from your checking account to your savings account, vice versa. There is not a tax consequence to that transaction. In this type of an account, you are going to have a tax consequence based on the type of position you're invested in and when it is sold. If you're able to use capital gains, most people are going to fall in that 15% capital gains, which can be significantly lower than your ordinary income. Now, one thing I do want to point out on here is this is referencing long-term capital gains, meaning you held that position for more than a year. So how can we look at using non-qualified money as a short-term savings bucket and having funds available prior to 59 and a half? We think about tax loss harvesting. This is going to be a dual goal where we think about correlating growth, right? No one ever wants to give up growth. As real estate agents, when you make a purchase on a property or help a family find that, you're always looking for real estate value to accrue and grow in value. So we think about tax loss harvesting in the same way. Your number one goal is always growth, but we want to realize some of those gains throughout the time that we're looking so that when you go to make that withdrawal from your non-qualified account, you're not experiencing a large tax bill from having to make that withdrawal. So tax loss harvesting keeps money in a more liquid, tax-friendly state as it's available for that quicker withdrawal and maybe needing it prior to 59 and a half. So we're going to kind of look at a case study as we think about flexibility. You know, there was a lot of details in that last section, but flexibility in having different locations for your assets is going to allow for different income streams as you look at creating different options. So asset location is how your asset is taxed, right? If you have Roth money, you have non-qualified money, you own a property, all of those are going to be taxed in different ways. And it's just understanding how to access that and look at where that is going. I've met with families previously that have said, oh yes, I've tried the Roth option. I didn't see any returns on it. When we think about putting money into that asset, right? IRA, Roth, non-qualified, whatever it might be, we then need to choose how it's working for you. So this is going to be your asset allocation. Think of when money goes into your checking account, right? Nobody expects to log into their checking account and say, I got a 10% rate of return. This is fantastic, right? We expect our checking account to be cash, liquid, ready to go, there for spending. We don't look at that as having growth. So we have a wide variety of options, and this is a pretty short list of how we look at investing. And this is where it gets into what is your risk tolerance? What are your income needs? When are withdrawals going to be needed from here? If you said, I'm going to make a large withdrawal next year, Is investing in Bitcoin the best option for you? I'm going to go with no. I'm not going to recommend that you be invested in Bitcoin if you're looking to take that money back out next year and we plan on having those funds there. So using something like a CD may be very beneficial if you're going to withdraw it in 6 months, but you also want to acquire some interest on there. So understanding how this works, your risk exposure, when you need to look at this. If we take a look at how the market has returned over time, if we give the market 10 years, you're always going to be further ahead than where you were previously. But just like we went through tariffs last spring, we've gone through a war this year, we're going to see volatility in the market. And so understanding when you expect that money to be there, how you're withdrawing, how is it going to be taxed, all ties into how we want to look at these various assets and how they come to be. So volatility is normal. When you are working and you're putting money into your savings plan, into your 401k, we think about volatility as a way of you getting stocks on sale, right? If you have a sudden drop and that happens to be the day that your investment goes in, you are what we call dollar cost averaging into that portfolio, and you are able to get that on sale and take advantage of having more uptick in that growth. So combining where you are in your savings and where, how you're looking to spend this becomes a very personal decision. And when you're first establishing your business, having an understanding of what the plan is for that long-term goal, the short-term goals, and thinking about how this is all going to come together to benefit you. Staying the course is one of those tough things, right? That is one of the main things when we open that statement and see a negative. I'm sure for real estate agents, it's like finding out that your favorite property is no longer valued at what you anticipate it to be valued at. Sometimes it just needs time to have that comeback. We think about what has happened since the 2008. There's many times where we see that. So staying the course and understanding why you invested the way that you did and how that is meeting your goals. So partnering with somebody that can help explain and walk you through the various times and how that looks provides that confidence. As our tagline says at 𝗡𝗶𝗯𝗃, peace and purpose for your money, right? We want to give you that confidence in knowing how you're invested and how it's working for you. So this case study here kind of breaks down that $1 million just as an example. And we think about this in risk. So each of these two case studies that we're going to look at, Mary and Tom, both have $1 million, both invested for 20 years and taking income out of there. And this is where understanding where you're taking withdrawals from can greatly impact how this looks. And as a reminder, right, I always like to use this as an example of what happens when we think about the social media effect on our investments and on our retirement. So many times I'll have people that are a part of an investment club or with their golf buddies, and they'll call and say, my friend just got 30% on their investment. I want to get that too, right? Is that 30% talking about today? What was the loss? How long were they invested in there? And so this is just a reminder of knowing what your risk tolerance is, what you're comfortable with, and what information is being given to you. So Mary is going to have 20 years of an 8.07% return, and Tom is going to have 20 years at an 8.09% rate of return. Relatively close, but we're going to see the impact of withdrawing on the difference of that. So Tom's portfolio here has a couple of 2013, 32%, 2019, 31%, several years over 20%, had that higher rate of return. After those initial 3 years, so we have $50,000 coming out a year, $150,000 withdrawn. This $1 million portfolio is just over half of what he started at. And at the end, after 20 years, there's only $400,000. This comes into play when we think about if you're a married couple at 65, there's a 50% chance one of you is making it to 92. So we think about maintaining your lifestyle, maintaining your income. Nobody wants to get to the point where they're told they have to cut back. And so understanding where your income is coming from can be prevalent in making sure that it's successful for you. So let's take a look at Mary. I really want to point out 2002 here. It's going to kind of go back to taxes. It's not always what you earn, it's what you keep. So it's not always what you earn, but what you keep. So Tom here in 2002, we can see lost that 22%. Mary, that same year in 2002, earned 0.25%. So kind of back to that social media. Nobody's going out and saying, I made 0.25% on my portfolio this year. But if we think about it in the scope of it's not what you earn, it's what you keep, Mary didn't lose 22% that year. So Mary took out the same $150,000 in those first 3 years, and this portfolio is only down $60,000 from that $150,000 in 3 years withdrawal. It allows this portfolio, there is 1 year in this 20-year time period where we go over 20%, right? 2009 is the only time. There's not a single 30% return on this portfolio. But at the end, the same $50,000 has come out, and this portfolio is at $2.2 million. So when we relate that back to, is this tax-free money? Is this IRA money? It kind of brings a whole new light to a small change that you do while you're working can greatly impact what happens down the road and get you started on the proper trajectory to make that difference as you think about when and where to take withdrawals from. One thing I do want to note really quickly when we think about Roth accounts, right? I mentioned you're paying taxes now. And so one caveat with that allows for withdrawals for individuals under 59 and a half, you have the opportunity, if you put into a Roth account, you put in an $8,000 contribution. You cannot touch the growth on that until you're over 59 and a half. But if you get 5 years down the road and you're needing to do something, you can access what you put in and already paid taxes on in a tax-free, unpenalized way. So it's a really interesting feature if you think about being able to blend where you might withdraw funds from. It gives you an additional tax-free way to think about accessing that even prior to 59 and a half. So this is always a stark difference, right? To compare 400,000 to 2.2 million, I always reference hindsight's 2020. Once we know information, we can always look back and say, well, yes, of course I would have chosen this portfolio because I want more. So it's understanding what you're comfortable with when you need to take withdrawals and how this ties in. Just understanding what your plan is back at the very beginning when we talked about lifestyle, knowing what percent is going in where and how that all optimizes your individual plan. So a lot of this is talking about saving and putting money aside. How much is taxes going to be taking out of this? How do we look at growth? What is our risk? So I want to make a quick side note and say part of this too is protecting, right? You didn't work this hard to not have either you use these funds and have them benefit you or benefit those that you love. So this is something quick and easy that you can do today right away and think about every single account that you own, your checking account, your savings account. Now, business accounts don't allow for this, but knowing that you have a business continuing plan, right? What happens if something happens to you? Who is handling your business and what is the plan for that if something were to happen? So making sure that you have a beneficiary on your account will ensure that it stays out of probate court. That's an additional expense where you're not working hard to have fees go to courts. So we want to ensure that you've got the beneficiaries transfer on death, the TOD, payable on death, POD. Those might be what a bank uses to pass those funds to people that you love and care about. If you're like, hey, I'm a single individual, I don't have a person that I'm wanting to leave this to. You can list a charity, but otherwise the state is going to step in and determine where your funds go. If you're married, good chance that you often travel with your spouse, right? You want to ensure that you have a contingent. If you're married, divorced, um, had more kids, you want to make sure that these are up to date. You can always change your beneficiaries at any point in time. If you've added a trust into your estate plan, it's imperative that your financial planner knows about the trust. If you've added properties, right, that needs to be included. So just understanding how estate planning ties into the rest of your financial picture. Think about protecting, right? I mentioned trust, understanding what type of trust you have. When you are a business owner, the exposure to what could happen with potential lawsuits or how that might look, you want to ensure what you've worked hard for and that that is protected in a way that makes sense for you. I'm not an attorney. There are numerous different types of trust out there, so it's important to understand your individual situation, if a trust makes sense, how that best aligns and how that works together. So always ensuring that what you've worked for is protected and working for you, making sure you understand the risk level, how assets are allocated, how that all ties in. So we think about what we're looking at ahead, right? We want to be proactive in our plans, being reactionary to something. I think it was mentioned at the Level Up conference about hiring the person so that you can grow further. We have that same mindset in financial planning, right? If we aren't proactive and looking ahead of right now, we're going through a new Fed chair being approved, right? So what happens? What will that do with our interest rate? How does that look at different things? What's going on in the tech space? Where do we see this? So being proactive and how that benefits each of our clients. So I want to, as we move into the close of this, I just wanted to take a minute and explain what we do, how we partner with different individuals and businesses to make the most of your planning. And so we provide if you click on this QR code in the next screen, what does that mean? I always like to give people an idea of what did I just say yes to? What did I sign up for and what's going to happen? So initially, we want to find out a little bit about you. What does your lifestyle? What does your retirement goals? What are your income? Where are you at with your business? And looking at, are you W-2 or 1099? That'll give you an idea of what savings opportunities, what income needs you have. So we get a chance to understand a little bit about who you are, what's important to you. We get back together and we go through a number of recommendations or plans, how, if you're able to set up a 401k or a SEP, what makes the most sense, how to take advantage if you're W-2. What does it mean if I switch some of my 401k savings from pre-tax into the Roth option, right? Maybe your spouse has that as an opportunity. What does it mean if they change? How does that work? And then if you're interested in working with us, that's something that we do at a third meeting and beyond. So our tagline, peace and purpose for your money, understanding how your finances are working for you, how your finances make the most and optimize who you are as a person, as a business, and making the most of all of that. So if you'd like, go ahead and click on that QR code. It'll give you the opportunity to just set up a quick 30-minute Zoom where you can get to know me a little bit more, ask any questions, and go through what opportunities you have and how to best optimize your savings plan. Nicole, I'll turn it back to you at this point and see if there's any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, does anybody have any questions about anything that she had? I mean, it's so funny because I recently started doing a lot of videos on basically for like a, adults who have aging parents who like what do we do? How do we handle some of this stuff? And I actually just did a video. I'm getting ready to post another one about some like financial decisions, but I posted one about TODs and PODs and nobody knows what that is. Nobody
Right.
knows about stuff that you need to have on your accounts and trusts and is the house in a trust? Is it not? So I think it's really smart to have all of this stuff in place and then make sure your parent stuff is also in place or your grandparent stuff. So then, like the situation that I use an example is, if your parents have a trust, like did they set that trust up when they were 25? And so, their child who's now 40, are they going to still go live with Aunt Linda if they pass away? Like when was their trust
Absolutely.
updated last? When were all your documents, set up or beneficiaries? My ex-husband was on like as a beneficiary for many years.
Yeah,
So that we had to change that, and sometimes it makes sense when you have little kids if that person's still your beneficiary. But I think that there's things that people don't really think about because they set it up a long time ago and, maybe they need to re go through everything and refresh all of their docs. So this was very helpful.
absolutely. Good, good.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, but I feel targeted. No, I'm basically 59 and a half.
Hey,
You
who
Yeah.
came
have a
up with
lot of
that number?
options.
Who came up with that number? Why
Yeah.
can't we just say 60 or 59?
Come
Why does it gotta
on.
be
Why
59
does it
and a
have to be
half?
a half? Like literally on May 29th, I'll be 59 and a half.
It's so funny, and we really didn't get into required minimum distributions, and the number for that used to be 70 and a half. So I was really excited when the IRS changed it to 72, now it's 73. But it's like, what?
What's
Why?
the
Why
half?
did we get to this many decades go by, and now we're like your half birthday? That's where
Yeah,
it's at. We're going to celebrate that.
right. Who knows? Maybe because 60 is a tough one. Maybe they're just giving you a little
Yeah.
something special before you're more. Lee's gonna be 60 tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, my husband. We're 7 months apart to the day. So yeah, good times.
It
It's
just
it's
means
a
you have
hard
more
one.
options.
Yeah, there you go. See positivity, Julie. You just
Yeah,
have
see?
more options.
It's
When
a
I see
silver
when I
lining.
see them like flying off to Greece, we'll know why.
Yeah. This is
Well,
true.
thank you so much for being on here. Skylar, you're the young buck on this call, so hopefully this helped you to think of some stuff to plan for the future. And Marissa's one has got young one, little baby, and well, he's not even a baby, he's almost a year, but she's got a little one. So it's all this stuff that we all, I think I have teenage kids. I feel like we got the whole spectrum here on
Yeah,
this call alone. So to kind of, hear it and think about where we each are in our lives and how we need to address things as we, you know, go through life. So this was great. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Of course, of course.
All right.
Well, I think Nicole, you've got my email. I'll get that email on there as well. So if any questions pop up afterwards, or you're just talking through something and you're like, wow, can my teenager set up a Roth account? Just shoot me an email. I'd be more than happy to go through any of that.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate you
I
being
just
on
booked a
here
meeting,
today.
Sheila.
Okay. I look forward to
Yay.
it, Julie.
Perfect. All right. Well, you guys
Sheila.
have an awesome day. Julie or Marissa, do you have anything? Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I was just saying thanks, Sheila, for being a part of Level Up and this, and we're
Yes.
excited to have you as a part of our circle here. So,
Sheila,
Yeah.
is this 𝗏𝗏 Financial? Is that like a local franchise? Is it a national franchise? What?
We have offices all throughout Michigan, Arizona, and Ohio. We are
Okay.
getting ready to open one in Naples, Florida. So we are nationally licensed, but don't have physical brick
Okay.
and mortar.
Yeah, I see the name a lot. I know there's an office in Plymouth, and
Yes,
I think
Ann
I've
Arbor.
gone to one of those, dinner things with a different office. Never moved forward with it, but I just think you have to have a fit with your financial advisor, if that makes sense.
yep,
And true to the Level Up form, I really like working with women. So
perfect.
yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to a great conversation and go from there.
Okay, sounds great.
All
All right,
right.
everyone, have an awesome day. And thank you again, Sheila, for being a part of our Modern Agent Blueprint and Level Up.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sheila.
See you later.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
guys.